Well, yeah, it's continued insurrection. Just like yesterday. Hey, TJ, I'm going to say a few things, and while I'm saying a few things, if you can show pictures of people breaking inside the Capitol, I'd really appreciate
Terrorists.
it. Because I think a lot of us have some questions, a lot of questions, not just for Donald Trump. I've got no questions for Donald Trump. He's an insurrectionist. There are no questions. He should be arrested today. He should be sent to jail today for insurrection against the United States of America. But I do wonder this morning why they weren't better prepared for this. Why weren't the Capitol Hill police better prepared for this? Why wasn't the city of Washington, D.C. better prepared for this? Why wasn't the National Guard better prepared for this? Why weren't law enforcement agencies all across the region better prepared for an invasion against the People's House, against the world's greatest deliberative body? And for those of you who have never been up on the Capitol, I spent quite a bit of time there. And even as a member of Congress, I had to have my ID to get in. If I walked across an adjoining street when no cars were on that street, but I didn't have a walk sign, Capitol Hill police would scream at the top of their lungs and tell us all to get back on the sidewalk. When I was walking to a State of the Union address across the street from the Capitol, 5 Capitol Hill police started screaming at me, telling me I had to clear the area. And yet, yesterday we saw some of these same Capitol Hill police officers, who, by the way, I never complained when they were tough. I want them to be tough. I want them to protect the People's House. Yesterday, we see them patting terrorists on the back. We see them taking selfies with people who are committing an insurrection against the United States of America, politely opening the door for terrorists who had scrawled on the door, "Murder the media," who had broken through this glass, letting them just walk through, letting these Trump supporters walk through freely and politely opening doors to the insurrectionists, and then letting the terrorists walk out of the same Capitol they had laid siege to and threatened the lives of members of the House and members of the Senate who they said they were coming to get, including Mike Pence. There has to be an investigation. How many of these Capitol Hill cops are members of Donald Trump's cult? How many?
It is a cult.
How many allowed this to happen? And I do want to know, where the hell were the D.C. police? Where the hell how did this happen? This hasn't happened since the War of 1812, when the British stormed Washington, D.C. It's obvious this was coming. Donald Trump promised this day was coming. He and his golf caddy, Dan Scavino, were putting out videos saying it was going to be wild. January 6th was going to be wild. We were warned that January 6th was going to be a dangerous day, not just in social media, not just in the media, but in our lives. People would come up to me and ask, "What do you think is going to happen on January the 6th? Well, what happened was the Capitol Hill police weren't ready. The D.C. police weren't ready. The National Guard wasn't ready. Nobody was ready.
Or was it okay because they are white? I just have to ask.
Oh, my God. Please.
Because
please. No,
I don't think
no.
this would have happened with Black Lives Matters protesters.
Let me tell you something. We don't have to even go there. If these insurrectionists were black, they would have been shot in the face. And my God, if these insurrectionists were Muslim, they would have been sniped from the top of buildings. So I want to know from the Capitol Hill police, what is it? Is it just white people? Or is it Donald Trump supporters? Why do you scream at people for walking across the street 3 blocks away from the Capitol? Why are you known as badasses around the Capitol? But then Trump supporters come in and you open the fucking doors for them. You open the doors for them and let them breach the people's house. What is wrong with you? I also want to know, are we a nation of laws? Are we a nation of one man? Donald J. Trump called for the insurrection against the United States of America. He called for it. Rudy Giuliani called for combat justice just an hour or two before this happened. Donald Trump Jr. said, "We are coming for you." That's insurrection against the United States of America. And if Donald Trump Jr., Rudy Giuliani, and Donald Trump are not arrested today for insurrection and taken to jail and booked, and if the Capitol Hill police do not go through every video and look at the face of every person that invaded our Capitol, and if they are not arrested and brought to justice today, then we are no longer a nation of laws, and we only tell people they can do this again. And guess what? This is what I've been saying about Oregon, about Portland for months. For months. If you put out a curfew, if you have laws, you either follow them or anarchy follows, and you encourage more anarchy. It's that simple. Let's bring in former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, retired 4-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. He's the Chief International Security and Diplomacy Analyst for NBC News. Admiral, I want to start with you. Then I want to bring in David Ignatius. Was yesterday an insurrection against the government of the United States of America?
Of course it was. Anybody who turned on a television yesterday and watched it saw that. And the protesters were bringing Trump flags. For me, the saddest moment was watching them attempt to take down the flag of the United States to put up a Trump sign. Think about that for a minute. I think this is a 9/11 level event in the sense that we are going to remember where we were, what we were doing when we turned on the television and watched the events yesterday. It is searing, in my view. And I, for one, will never look at a MAGA hat again without thinking of this day. And if you are a decent American, put away your MAGA hat, put away your Trump flag. Remember what those symbols were used for on this day. I'll tell you, Joe, what it reminds me of, and I don't mean to be melodramatic, and I don't think it is at all, is 9/11, in the sense that after 9/11, President Bush came to the Pentagon and he gathered the senior military, the admirals and generals, and he said, remember this. Remember this day. The buildings still smelled like cordite, like I suspect the Capitol today smells like tear gas. We need to remember this day so that we can understand what happened. And yes, we need a serious national level investigation into what has happened, specifically in the failure to protect the People's House. But even more importantly, we need to get at the root causes here and ensure that we don't fulfill de Tocqueville's premise about democracy. He said, democracy is a wonderful institution, but its tragedy comes if you elect the government you deserve. I think it's time for us to recognize this is not the government of the people of the United States of America. Put away those MAGA hats, put away those Trump flags. Let's get a new president in place. Let's sail on.
David Ignatius, you warned this was going to happen in your last column. You said, yeah, Trump's going away, but we're not out of the woods yet. And my God, those words became way too prescient yesterday. And I agree with Admiral. We had another 9/11 event. Unfortunately, the attack against the Capitol was from within.
It was shocking for everyone to watch it. I distinguish between two strands of this. First, for months, Donald Trump has been inciting against our system. He's been threatening that he wouldn't abide by our election results. After the election, he defied the courts. He defied every objective attempt to establish that Joe Biden won. And then there's a second, more immediate tactical question. How was the security of the Capitol breached? Everybody who was involved in the planning for this, Joe, knew that the likely course was that these insurgents, I'm not going to call them protesters anymore, would march from the ellipse to the Capitol, and that they might try to storm the Capitol. So when I asked Tuesday my sources who were involved in this planning, what are you going to do? The answer was, that's the responsibility of the Capitol Police. There will be 500 to 600 of them. They will expand their perimeter. They will keep these people out. They radically underestimated the numbers. The top FBI estimate of the number of people was about 20,000. Probably, all told, there were more like 40,000 gathered in the demonstrations on Wednesday. The Capitol Police simply did not defend that barricade. They let people walk through. We've all seen the pictures. And then a series of things happened. These people had planned very carefully how they were going to operate, where they'd enter, how they'd move. They fancy themselves as modern-day freedom fighters. You can just see the smug looks on their face in the photographs that were captured. So that needs to be investigated really carefully. I just want to make one point, which is that the planners who were trying to prevent what happened and failed had an overriding mission, which was a good one, which was to try to avoid this being militarized. We do not want Tiananmen Square images to persist. We have 70 million Americans who voted for Donald Trump, and many of those people feel that this process has been fraudulent. The last thing we needed was that kind of confrontation. So as timid as this reaction looked, I think the net effect of this, of what happened yesterday, was to devalue this movement. It's lost a lot of support. They popped their own balloon. Their actions disgusted a lot of Americans who might have been sympathetic before. So I think that's beneficial, and I think it's really beneficial that our uniformed military, which needs to stay out of politics, needs to fight foreign wars, not get involved in domestic disagreements, was not brought in. I think that really matters. The other